Hey there, everyone. Hopefully things are going well for you. So the other day I put out an update to the Unofficial Balance Patch mod, and normally I go through these in text on what is it called? The Steam Workshop forum, right? Because you get a little forum that you can access for your mod, and people can read it. It doesn't get a ton of visibility though, and also I didn't think it was particularly easy to read through my walls of text. So I figured I would just kind of show everyone what the new things are in this version. So it came out coinciding with the 2.1 balance patch of the game. Obviously, the thing that kind of drove the update timing is that there was a crash that the new patch, the 2.1 official patch, introduced in my mod. That issue was with any time I summon units. So as you might imagine, that affects things like Morselmaker's changes or whatever. So I fixed that soft lock and then kind of held the patch until the main patch came out. So that's kind of the timing of it all. Definitely there's some other fixes that I put in there. Uh, I'm just going to kind of hop to the logbook though, and let's talk through some of the changes. And obviously, I'll lead by saying if you have any comments about anything I've done here, if you have any interesting insights into, whether you like the changes or not, things you still want to see done, let me know in a comment. I'd be happy to discuss it with anyone. And yeah, let's kind of jump right into that. The only other issue that was really fixed bug-wise in this is, if you remember, I've changed the size of some units in this mod, and one thing that someone had reported to me is that when I change the size of units, they still look the same size in game. And so I fixed that. So now if I made them smaller, then they look smaller. If I made them bigger, then they look bigger. And it makes a lot more sense that way. This affected quite a number of units, actually. So it was kind of nice that someone reported it and I actually noticed it and got a chance to fix that. Also, I will lead by saying that a few more changes from my mod were made baseline in this patch, the official patch anyway, and so I reverted those back. So those ones are first, Transcendent. They adopted the 2 Ember that I had in the patch. Now, in the balance patch, this is going to be weird, all right? I'm just going to kind of cut you off real quick and let you know. I'm talking about an unofficial balance patch, and I'm also talking about an official balance patch. 2.1 is the official balance patch. I'm going to call it just 2.1 as best I can. Whenever I say patch, though, I'm probably talking about the mod. All right, so the mod had 2 Ember on Transcendent, and they took that and added it in. Now, really what kind of happened here is more than anything, they saw that Transcendent was mega overperforming, and they asked for input on how to nerf it. And so, everyone kind of gives their own suggestions, and I kind of pointed to my mod as, hey, I've had it nerfed for a while, and it feels pretty okay in practice. So that was my contribution. Whether or not they valued it, that's I can't say. I won't speak for them. So anyway, that has been reverted. This change is now baseline. The next one that has been made baseline is Thorned Hollow. So not every part of this was made baseline, but a good part of it was. So in the base game, he is 15-15. He doesn't have this extra 10 HP, but they baselined the 60 max health here and the spikes 3. Now, in the mod, I've also changed the essence. You can see it's got that Rejuvenate gain spikes 3 on it. In the base game, it's just spikes 10, which is really bad. So it's not a full adoption, it is a partial adoption. I think their approach was to help it a little bit and see what that does to the statistics on the card. And with any luck, they want to see that kind of help it out. Whereas, I took a much more wholesale approach of making this thing just significantly better overall. The next one that was adopted is Lodestone Totem. So not the base card. So I've written this base card so that it basically can cost less, right? The only thing that's functionally different about Lodestone Totem in the mod is that you basically apply your sap on action instead of on incant. And that's important because it means if you want to do it before you get attacked, you need to give this thing quick. Because you have to invest a little more into it, get a little good RNG, find quick somehow, I was able to reduce the cost from 3 to 2. The main reason I do this is because it makes the card less binary, right? In the base game you play this thing, it's like, all right, if I can successfully play 2 of these and then incant, I win. Whereas in the mod, successfully playing 2 is easier, but you need to kind of set them up a little more before they just, win the run for you. What they adopted, though, is the unit essence, the +2 Ember and Incant Sap 1 enemy units. So this is a bug fix in disguise because the combat preview is actually broken for the old version of this where it incanted and sapped one unit randomly, because you could, hover your spell and it would show random incant targets. And then when you let go of your spell, it would incant and hit on some other unit, and it would not make any sense. They have, internal design philosophies against that kind of thing. So as a result, this was kind of thrust upon as like a balance change mixed with like to address bad performance and then also to kind of fix that issue. So that's change that has been adopted. So all of these have been reverted in the mod so that, there's no changes in the mod for those areas. The next thing I want to hit on is changes that I've made to update cards. So if we go to our friend Branded Warrior, you're going to notice something. He has Rage 7 by default, which is an increase from Rage 4. This means that instead of coming in at 18 damage, he comes in at 24 damage, obviously with a big part of it being Rage. So that's nice. Also, Slay gain Rage 5 to the floor, and his Essence does the same thing. Now, this Essence is really strong right now in Sweeper units, so I've done a lot of testing, and I think it's okay when you compare it to other sorts of infusions that you can give sweepers. But this is very strong. This is a buff here. It's basically like apply Fledgling Imp's effect whenever you slay. Pretty strong. And then he gets it himself as well. So he's feeling a lot better. In testing, I think this is a significant improvement. I like his ability. I like the way he plays, and I like his infusion. He just needed a bump in numbers to compete with elite units pretty much. The next change I did is with Pyre Chomper. So base card is the same. I made his essence the same thing as his card text. The fact that he gave -4 Ember on infusion is really bizarre. There's like 2 units in clan that benefit from it, and one that is not really helped at all. And the Ember essences are really low impact. They don't feel good, right? Whereas this being a summon effect, plays in a Transcend Imp, you can fuse it around, you can kind of mix and match and create, your ideal imp for a run if you have a lot of X cost or something. This is just way better in general, just getting the card text. So that's good. The next change is actually to the Sentient, so we'll go over here and look at it. You will notice that, where is it? Explosive. So in the 2.0 patch, I added regen to it to kind of give it a little bit of an initial bump. And then I also kind of buffed this rejuvenate from 60 to 80. I did a lot of testing with this, and I found that this is way too strong at a higher number. The number of hits that you require to kind of clear a floor is so much lower, and you can kind of just chump out the Divinity with it. Now, obviously 60 is not, you can't machine gun heal the Sentient and clear the Divinity waves at 60, but you can do some damage with it. And with Regen 6, this actually gives you a free bunch of procs, which is really helpful. It means if you miss on a turn with Regen, you still have some ticks left that you will get some hits with. So just having the regen, I think, is sufficient here to make this much more competitive. Obviously, you can add to it yourself, but this helps with Relentless and a lot of other things too. So that was a nerf in this version of the patch, patch being the mod. The next one, and this is one I think that is going to be pretty interesting. I'm very curious to see what you all think about it. I have changed Wilting Sapwood significantly. So it's back to 3 space, just fine. Back to 2 Ember. I mean, it's always been 2 Ember in the mod too, so it's not a big deal. But I've made it into a proper hollow. It gains 100 max health on summon. You notice its stats are 0-20. And then it has this fun little ability where its attack is equal to its health. Now, as you might imagine, that means you drop this thing. If you can full heal it on turn 1, you now have a 120-120 unit, which is extremely strong, very powerful. And the nice thing is it can benefit from your heals in the backline, but it's actually quite balanced. I'm a big fan of this ability. I've had a number of folks test it, and I think really highly of it because it's very bad and relentless, right? You may have 120 HP, but every time you get hit, you lose damage, and you can lose a lot of damage as a result of that. And for funsies, I actually gave this whole ability, the attack is equal to health, into its essence, which lets you do some fun stuff. A good way of thinking about this, you could put it into another hollow, for instance, just get extra attack. There's some fun things you can do with it. I've had some interesting runs. The nice and most the funnest thing about this for me is how it interacts with all the other game mechanics. So like if you sap this unit, it doesn't do anything. If you rage this unit, it doesn't do anything because its attack is always equal to its health. But this means if you use like Cycle of Life or Echo Infusion on this thing and boost its max HP, you will actually boost its attack as a result. So you can offensively scale it with things like Echo Infusion or whatever. There's not a lot of cards that boost its HP, admittedly. But still, even if you just full heal this thing, it seems like 120, 120, which is way more competitive. I'm very interested in what you all think of this. So, leave a comment if you have ideas about what your thoughts are here. I encourage you all to try it as well. I'm a big fan. I've tried this a bunch, and I'm really happy with it. I think this is great. Cool. All right, so next one is another nerf. It's going to be not deep offering. Here we go. I brought it back to 2 Ember. The existence of Value Stone in the mod is a big problem for a lot of cards. I had buffed this previously to 1 Ember, and you could remove Consume, Value Stone, dupe, and then immediately win the game off of an immediate infinite, because that would just discard, but it wouldn't consume. You draw the other one. It was really rough. I think it's too strong. So this card has to always be Ember negative in the best case. And because of Value Stone, that means I had to bring it back to 2 Ember. I think it's fine. It's definitely still pickable if you want to go that route. But, its cantrip nature, the fact that it doesn't really do too terribly much, but give you more cards and, triggered offerings as well. That's a little more annoying to play in the base case, but I think it's fine. I had to do that nerf for sure. It was definitely overperforming before. All right, now in my ongoing conquest to improve Umbra, I have touched up Penumbra again. So I'm actually going to go over here and pull up Penumbra on this because you'll notice he now has Lifesteal 2 by baseline. And so I've removed the Lifesteal 2 from the Gorge Path and I've added it to baseline Penumbra. This now carries over. So if we go back over here, you see it's on all paths. This is extremely nice because, Gorge obviously doesn't change as a result, but Monstrous now has Lifesteal 2, so it can take a couple rounds, slam, and do some damage and feel good. So that is a big improvement. It also benefits, of course, Architect as well, if you want to frontline with it, or if it gets hit for any reason, it plays well into top floor Divinity, things like that. So it's nice. It's actually really good. I think this is a big overall buff to Penumbra, and it feels great. I'm a big fan of this. So that is that change. I will go to the next one, which is Primordium. You'll note I brought him back to 3/3 base stats. So the reason I buffed him to 4/4, and one of the reasons I think that I did this in the previous version, this was a long time ago, right, is because I wanted the parity of you're spending 2 space on essentially 1 morsel that counts for an Antembra morsel and a magma morsel, right? So you get +4/+4. Now, obviously, they increased the stats on those, so they're +6/+6. I don't want to buff Primordium; he's too strong already, and so it kind of lost the flavor value of the whole thing, right? So Superfood is now 3/3 all the way throughout. Aggressive Edible is now 3 health all the way throughout. The attack hasn't changed at all in these rounds. And then Stalwart Snack hasn't really changed. It always gets that +1 on the first round, so that it sucks a little less, and then it gets some damage throughout. 4, 6, 8, and so forth. So that's the change there. Next, this is maybe controversial, but I'm sure no one's going to disagree with me when I say that Morsel-Made is ridiculously strong. So I addressed Morsel-Made. I did a lot of testing. I'm sure you maybe immediately noticed the change here. I did a ton of testing, and frankly, the fact that it immediately eats morsels and gorges for +2/+2 is ridiculous. This thing gets out of control way too fast. Now, I haven't done anything to address the fact that hunger is a very annoying mechanic to play because you have animation locks after every morsel. I I'm not going to reprogram the entire game here because the way it behaves is, as expected, I suppose. It's what you'd expect to happen, even if it's not great. But I did gut out its gorge ability entirely. Now, it doesn't change its essence at all because, its essence never had the gorge ability. So, you can pass basically its entire card text over now. But this means you still get really strong, but you're very dependent on generating a lot of morsels. This is no longer an automatic win. I think that there are decks where you would skip this now, even if you have some morsels, because you maybe aren't generating enough to actually benefit from it. You're not just going to generate, 30 stats from 15 morsels casually. It's still really good though. Like this is an awesome card still. I think this is a good nerf. I've tried it with the +1/+1 instead of +2/2, and this just feels much better. This feels more balanced. Even the +1/+1 feels overwhelming. So obviously, if statistics show that this thing it drops off a cliff in usage or whatever, then I might tweak it up. We'll see. I'm pretty happy with it as is now, though. The next one is Morselmaker. I mentioned that I fixed a crash with him, so I did that, but I also changed him a little more. I made him, instead of summoning 2 morsels, he summons 1 with damage shield 1, and it's a minor instead of the Penumbra or magma. Now, this is a nerf buff, right? The main reason I did this is, 1, there was a bug with the randomly generated morsels interacting with Morsel-Made that resulted in, again, weird, incorrect combat previews. So I had to change the random morsel factor. The next thing is I really don't think the way it behaves right now is particularly in the base game rather is particularly great. It's nice to generate things that have some survivability, 2 chump blockers, but the main problem with that is harvest waves farm it, and yeah. So this creates a better morsel that is better to interact with. It feels good to see this thing come out. It's a minor, right? That's good. And it still chump blocks 2 hits because of the damage shield 1 that it comes with. And more importantly, that makes this card extremely good at setting up top floor Divinity because you spawn protected morsels automatically. You don't have to worry too much about things like, oh, did I find winged technology or chain of gems or whatever, or gem trove or something like that. This kind of helps solve that. Obviously, some of the other buffs from the nerf, some of the other buffs from the mod itself still apply. It's only 1 ember cost instead of 2, and its essence is its card text, just like before, but obviously, updated to its current card text. So this feels really good in practice. I'm a huge fan of it. I encourage you to try it out and let me know what you think. All right, that's everything for Umbra. Now, next one, maybe a little disappointing. 3 cost Hallowed Halls. This card is bananas. I did not want to nerf the card too much, but it is out of control. The other thing is being able to -2 holdover this thing at 0 cost is crazy. Even -1 holdover is crazy for how powerful this card is. I wanted to make people think about it more and think about its usage more. I get that this maybe won't feel great. It's not going to be perfect because oh my gosh, you can't play 2 in a turn without 4 ember anymore, right? But or 2 in a turn when it's -1 with 4 ember is kind of what I'm getting at. It requires a little more investment. But I really wanted to avoid putting things like consume on it or changing its card text because the card is very fun. People like it a lot. It's just way out of control. So I've tried this. It feels all right. It feels fine. Obviously, it's a little more limited in its usage because you can't just slam it because it's expensive. But if any card is worth 3 Ember, it's this one, quite frankly. There's just no way around it. That's the only change this time around in Melting. All right, the next are all in Wurmkin. Most of them are nerfs. Some of them are buffs, though. But I want to first is pointing out the Bogdeep Cocoon change. So immediately you'll notice this thing is now 1 space instead of 3 space. That's a big buff. One of the problems with this card right now in the base game is that it is very hard to fit it onto a floor. It's fragile. You want to give it life, but you also want to give it very strong offensive things. And if you miss things like Hardened Hull or whatever, then you kind of get stuck, right? You have a hard time hatching this thing. It's got shell 12. It needs to survive for you to do this. It's tough. So I made it one space with no other changes to the cocoon itself. This lets you slot it into a floor a lot easier, which is great. And as you know, every time an egg hatches, it gains one space, which means that the bog wormling itself is now only 2 space, down from 4. Now I did lower its numbers slightly. It used to be 90-60. It is now 70-50. The fact that you can, dupe it and slot so many more into a floor, I had to nerf its base stats a little bit. I haven't touched its ability. It's really strong, but I think it's okay. It feels more on par with the other rare units in this state, which I think is good. So that's great. I think overall it's nice. It's important to note the change that this results in for Martial as well. As you recall, modded Martial let me pull it up. Yeah, it adds a Bogdeep Cocoon to your hand with some stats. Cool. So it used to have some card text that said, make it one space. So like this Martial Lord would spawn a one space one. Now, since the baseline unit is one space, doesn't say that anymore. The card functions the same. I haven't changed this at all, but you can imagine how this makes it a little easier to understand what's going on with the egg. It even shows it in that card text, the added card text. So that's nice, kind of a neat little follow-on. Now let's talk some of the nerfs. So I'm just gonna look for Snare instead. So I had Echo Snare is a really good card in the mod right now. So it applies Reap 1 per Echo to enemy units. This was Reap 2 to kind of echo, to be similar to Shelter is the card name. I tested this and it seemed okay, but in practice with other people testing it, this got out of control too fast. It was with apply Reap 2 per Echo, you could get numbers for 1 Ember cost that were way out of line. Basically, you had like Shrouds, not Shroud Spike, but Wormkin Spike, more or less, just slamming floors. I think it would apply like 14 Reap to all enemy units, and it was just nuts. So I had to bring it back a bit. This is still very strong. The fact that you can now have 2 echoes on a floor and apply 2 reap instead of 1 is just great. You can load out a floor with 4, get 4 reap. That's pretty solid. So feels much better. This is also way more balanced if you double stack this thing, right? So that's important. The next one I'm going to hit on is, since I'm going through the nerfs, Proclamation. Now 1 cost. There's basically no way that these extract cards should be 0, right? They're just way too strong. You have to invest a -1 if you want it to be free, in my opinion. Just no way around it. Pretty straightforward. And I think that covers all the nerfs there. No, there's another one. Glareminder. The card text, I've made this thing more of a mage in the mod. So you notice it doesn't have sweep, but instead it has stronger abilities. It used to have the entire card text in the infusion, but now it just has the inspire ability, not also the etch. I had some of the tough parts about this in the mod itself before was that you could self-infuse this thing and it would just destroy waves, destroy everything with its abilities. So I needed to make it not feel so easy to just get out of control. So I removed the lesser part of its ability from the infusion. This also means that you kind of want to keep this unit around, right? It's not always just like, infuse this into something else and get the same unit out of it. So yeah, that has been changed a bit. I think this is a warranted nerf on the infusion side. Okay, that hits all the nerfs. Now we're going to talk about some buffs. We're going to go to our Glugsider friend. You'll notice something very important missing from this guy. He no longer has his extract cost. I have experimented with so many things on this unit, and this card feels terrible in the base game because not only does it cost so much to play, it's just unwieldy. The draw order is frustrating, and it's not even very impactful when you do play it. So in this case, we have this thing. It costs more Ember, so it's 2 Ember now instead of 1. And it has less HP than the base game, of course, but it doesn't extract, and so that makes it way better with Endless, and you can just play it on turn 1 now, right? without having to do nonsense like intrinsic soul siphon. Think about this. You would spend 10 shards intrinsic soul siphon to guarantee this thing on turn one. And it's not even that good, right? Like you drop it and it's like, okay, great. I have a bad hot shark, basically. It's not even good. It drains the echoes that it took to fill up the floor, so it can't even do a lot of damage unless you just dump a bunch of cards into its floor. You put so many resources into this thing, and it does not do enough. So now it doesn't drain your resources. It's great. You don't have to spend shards to play it or like, get good luck or whatever. And it's solid. Obviously, I've nerfed the HP. I've removed the Inspire ability entirely, and it just performs better in general now. It's just a really strong card at this point. I'm a big fan. I think it's not particularly interesting, right? It's like, oh boy, revenge, apply reap 5 to the attacker. But like, I don't know. The base card wasn't very interesting either. I don't think this is particularly crazy. And I kind of want to keep the flavor of it, soaking hits for you. So that's where it's at. Obviously, the infusion is here. I don't think there's any change to this. I think this is basically the same as the base game right now. Pretty sure. So that's that. And then the last change is to Perfect Insanity. This in the previous version of the mod did the exact same thing here. I've removed the 666 damage of weirdness and just made it kill a non-boss unit. It was extract 5. I have now reduced it to extract 4 after further testing. And this just feels great, right? It's like a targeted crushing demise that just is an extract card. Really good, honestly. It's just really solid. Just kill a mini boss on the Divinity, just kill, a scary heavy or something like that, and it doesn't cost, 6 extract in order to pull it off. Obviously, this is a nerf in some sense because you can't cast this on like Crystal Cloak and just kill it, right? Because it says non-boss. Yeah, you obviously also can't kill like, Divinity with it. But that's, I think, okay. In practice, this feels better in general. You're spending fewer resources on most average turns and getting great value out of it. You kill a 290 or something like that, this is strong. It feels good. Has a cost associated with it that is, in my opinion, comparable to something like Crushing Demise or whatever. So, and that I'm going through the change log now. That is the last change in the current mod version. So I encourage you to check it out. You can find it on the Steam Workshop if you're interested, never seen it before. I do a modded gameplay series for this, so that's cool. I'll definitely check out those if you're interested in kind of see how it plays overall. Anything that comes after this in that series will be on the new patch, so very well. You kind of expect all the changes that we just talked about to be factored in. To turn it on, you just kind of subscribe to it on the, which we'll call it the workshop on Steam, and it'll show up here, and then you come in here, you turn on the mod loader, you turn on the balance patch, and that's it. And that's everything I got for you. I kind of just wanted to cover the changes here because I thought it was interesting and kind of a different approach here. Maybe spur some better discussion than what I get on the Steam Workshop forums, right? And yeah, hit me up in the comments if you have thoughts, if you want to kind of give me feedback on whatever you saw here. And yeah, I will see you in the series where we continue playing it. So take care, everyone.